Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are breaking down the seismic indictment that just dropped on RCI Hospitality Holdings, the publicly traded company behind dozens of clubs and restaurants. If you own the stock, you're going to want to stick around for this.
So if you're an investor in RCI, this is it. This is the question you've got to be asking yourself right now. You see the headlines, but the real story, the stuff that's actually going to determine the future of your investment, is buried inside the indictment. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack those facts step by step to help you figure out that exact risk. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, first things first, before we dive into all the details, we really need to get our heads around the sheer scale of the legal trouble RCI is facing. I mean, this is not some minor issue. We are talking about an indictment with more than 70 criminal counts. And these aren't just targeting a couple of rogue employees. No, they're aimed right at the company's top executives, its subsidiaries in New York, and, the parent corporation itself. And according to the prosecutors, this wasn't some quick, bad decision. The indictment lays out a systematic 14-year conspiracy. It allegedly ran from September of 2010 all the way to January of this year. Now, a timeline like that suggests a problem that's deeply, deeply embedded in the company culture, not just some recent mistake. So what are these 70-plus counts all about? Well, they basically fall into three major buckets of really serious felonies, and if you're an investor, you need to know what they are. Let's break them down. First up, you've got conspiracy. Now, this charge is critical because it means prosecutors believe this was a coordinated team effort to break the law. From an investor's point of view, that totally undermines any argument that this was just, one bad apple acting alone. Next up, bribery. This is really the heart of the alleged corruption. We're talking about giving a New York State tax auditor things like all expenses paid trips down to Florida, cash, entertainment, you name it. And the goal? All to get favorable results on their audits. And that brings us to what is probably the most financially damaging charge of all: criminal tax fraud in the first degree. The indictment alleges the company deliberately dodged paying more than $1 million in New York sales tax in a single year. That is the most serious tax charge you can get. So, who exactly is on the hook for all this? This is a huge question for any investor who's wondering if the company can just, clean house and move forward. Now, this slide right here, this gives you the answer, and it's a big one. The indictment doesn't just go after individuals. Yeah, the CEO, Eric Langan, and the CFO, Bradley Che, they're charged personally. But, and this is the key for shareholders, the publicly traded parent company, RCI Hospitality Holdings, is named as a defendant right alongside its New York businesses. Okay, so the indictment isn't just a list of accusations. Prosecutors have packed it with text messages and emails that they claim come directly from the defendants, and it gives us this pretty startling behind-the-scenes look at how this whole thing allegedly worked. It all seems to start with a big, expensive problem. On April 12, 2018, CEO Eric Langan allegedly shoots a text to another executive, basically warning them that the company is looking at a potential $3 million tax bill in New York. That's a serious hit to the bottom line. But then, just a few hours later, a second text from Langan allegedly pops up, and it looks like the problem is solved. That $3 million nightmare has somehow shrunk to just $350,000 plus interest. He even mentions that their controller, a guy named Tim, is meeting with the auditor that night, and then he ends the text with a little winking emoji. So how did that problem get solved so fast? Well, the indictment alleges it was through bribes. On that very same day, another executive texts Langan that Tim's guest, who is allegedly the auditor, would like another $1,500, and then adds that they'd already given him $2,000 the day before. And this whole thing wasn't just a one-time deal. It apparently went on for years, right up into 2023. I mean, check this out. Here, the current CFO, Bradley Che, allegedly texts that the same controller, Tim, is clutch for getting another tax bill down to just $47,000. But then he adds, it came with conditions. The company now owes him a couple trips. Okay, so with all of that laid out, we get to the real bottom line. What does all this actually mean for your investment in RCI? And how do you even begin to think about the risk of a permanent loss of your capital? So here's the thing you absolutely have to understand. There are two different tracks of liability here. You've got the individuals, the execs, who are facing personal consequences, like fines, maybe even jail time. But for you, the investor, the corporate liability is the real monster under the bed. The company itself is facing huge fines, having to pay back any legal gains, massive reputational damage, and maybe even getting delisted from NASDAQ. And here's where we can start to put some numbers on that financial risk. The indictment claims the company dodged over $8 million in New York sales taxes. Now, you can bet the state is going to want that money back, plus interest, and you better believe there will be some very painful financial penalties tacked on top of that. So let's just boil this all down to the key takeaways for an investor. 1. The charges are against the parent company, RCI Holdings, the stock you actually own. 2. This alleged scheme wasn't some isolated thing. It was a decade-long practice that went all the way to the top. 3. The allegations are backed up by what really looks like incriminating evidence, in their own words. And finally, and this is probably the most important part, because the corporation itself is charged, just swapping out the CEO and CFO doesn't make this problem vanish. The company is still on the hook. And that brings our explainer to a close, leaving you with the final critical question that really determines the risk to your money. When a company's alleged corruption runs this deep, and the corporation itself is on trial, can a new management team really fix it? And what does that mean for the value of your investment in the long run?